Hello, everybody, and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows that we watch so that you don't have to. We darken our Sundays to brighten your Mondays. And I'm Katie Halper.
And I'm Aaron Maté, and we ruin our Sundays. We ruin it. The Sunday is ruined just to brighten your Mondays. So
right, we ruin our Sundays to brighten your Mondays. Yeah, yes, and of course we are here offering our reactions, sharing them with you, and then because that's not enough, and you need more of that, we want to invite you to our call-in, which we do right after at 11 a.m. EST. We do this every week. And that's where we take your phone calls. And the link to that is in the description. And of course, we just invite you once again to become Substack members at usefulidiots.substack.com. Or if you're watching us on Rumble and you're into locals, welcome. Safe space for you as well. And you can go to usefulidiots.locals.com. And you get extended interviews as well as Thursday Throwdown, which is when we react to midweek media clips, and that's your midweek dose of media madness. And one more thing that we're inviting you to do, throw those likes down. Give us a like, guys. That's how you fight back against the corporate overlords who try to manipulate you. We got to fight on the algorithmic level. So when you hit like, it's effortless, it's free, and all you're doing is sharing the gospel of Useful Idiots and Monday Morning. So just smash it. That's really all we have to say. It's smash the like. There's no excuse not to. And subscribe at youtube.com/usefulidiots or rumble.com/usefulidiots. And that's another free way to support the show. And you don't want to miss it. You're doing yourself a favor. You're welcome.
You've got to fight for your right to like. And the way you fight is by hitting the like button.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the easiest way to fight. You're so lucky you get to click truth to power.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of truth to power, let's get to the brave, the one and only Chuckster of Meet the Press.
This is going to be one of the good Sunday morning. This is going to be one of the busiest weeks yet in the presidential campaign as the 2024 Republican field grows. So do concerns among some Republicans that none of Donald Trump's current rivals are going to be able to beat him in a primary. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott.
By the way, again, I don't think they've even mentioned, they certainly haven't had them on, but I don't think they've even mentioned Marianne Williamson or Bobby Kennedy. And you'd think that they would, because just like they're covering the Republican primary, now, to be fair, maybe they're like, it's a moot point because the Democrats are cowards and they're not going to debate Marianne Williamson or Bobby Kennedy anyway. But it's still newsworthy that they've entered the race, right?
Of course it is. And the problem is, like, from a cable news point of view, the Democratic primary has nothing going for it. Like, it's not talking about Trump, right? Because it's the Democratic side. It requires talking about Biden, which they don't want to do because they don't. Like, Biden's so boring and he's out of it and they don't want to kind of acknowledge his existence. It's all about Trump. And third, they don't want any competition to Biden and they don't want to let people know. To the point where recently there's even been some poll I saw that excluded RFK Jr. from choices for Democratic voters who they would vote for. So they really, really, really want to not have a primary on the Democratic side. And they want to talk about the Republicans because that allows them to talk about their favorite topic, which is Trump.
Right. And I think something ironic is that I think a lot of people are afraid of a debate because they want Biden to be president and they're afraid he's going to look bad in a debate against Williamson and Kennedy. But of course, he's going to look bad in a debate against Trump as well. So even if you like Biden, you probably want to give him a chance just to practice. But also, if your priority is beating Trump, maybe you should try out the other people running. But of course, they don't want to do that. Anyway, all right, let's keep going.
Scott is announcing his campaign tomorrow in his hometown of North Charleston before heading to the early states of Iowa and New Hampshire. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is expected to formally file paperwork for president this week. A bit of a soft launch of his campaign with a video and a donor retreat at the Four Seasons in Miami before formally having the big campaign rally announcement later in the month. But when the year began, DeSantis had the look and feel of not just a frontrunner, but of a potential juggernaut. The last 5 months have not been kind. Trump has relentlessly attacked him, and under those attacks, DeSantis has floundered a bit. He has struggled with big donors who have complained quite publicly that he, quote, doesn't even return phone calls. Others don't like his position on abortion, the 6-week ban, and believe it would be a problem in a general election. And still others worry about his charisma. He launched a book tour. It was immediately overshadowed when he called the Ukraine war a territorial dispute.
You know, I think the worry about his charisma is a fair concern. Have you seen video clips of him? He's pretty uncharismatic.
Yeah,
he's got
very uncharismatic.
He's got an awkward laugh.
He sounds whiny also. He sounds like
really
he's whiny no matter what he's saying. Yeah.
That's a fair concern. But what's funny is Chuck's framing of his lack of charisma has to do with his remarks on Ukraine.
Right. Or at least not his lack of viability, let's say.
Yeah. Where again, if you look at polls on the Republican side, they are not pro-proxy war, at least according to most of them. So that's like a stretch to say that that's going to hurt him, at least with the base, because the base is not where Chuck Todd is at.
Right.
He walked it back.
Also, though, I can't believe he can't.
Then there's
he can't call back his donors. I mean, that's just. I mean, what a rookie mistake.
Oh yeah, you got to call back the donors. I'm surprised by that. Yeah.
Ron, from me to you, we're not big fans of yours, but we're going to give you a tip. Pro tip: call back donors.
Fight with Disney, where he took a political advantage and a victory, and it has now turned into a political problem. The DeSantis slump has made more Republicans who believe Donald Trump cannot win a general election flirt with jumping into this race themselves. From New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu to North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum to former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And if no alternative materializes there, donors are likely to keep shopping for Republicans with general election appeal, like Governor Brian Kemp.
That's a cool slip. Keep shopping for a candidate.
Yeah.
So they're buying a candidate, basically. That's what you do when you shop.
Right.
I like that slip from Chuck. That's really the way we can get corporate news to cover, corporate dominance of our politics is with slips like that, like acknowledging that they shop for candidates.
Well, what I also like about that is that he's setting the stage for buyer's remorse.
Indeed.
Or Governor Glenn Youngkin, who himself rolled out a curious video this week that cast himself as the successor to Ronald Reagan. In the meantime, it appears that the first big fight between the two current frontrunners for the Republican nomination will actually be over the issue of abortion and whose position makes them more electable. Ironically, that electability fight may not be about January 6th and Trump's growing legal baggage. This week, Trump said that, quote,
sorry, I'm a bit late with this joke, but like, if you're going to cast yourself as a successor to Reagan, first of all, I don't know why you'd want that legacy. Reagan oversaw murderous, dirty wars in Central America. He gutted social services. And also, he developed Alzheimer's, which his aide said he probably had while he was in office. And, just to be, if anyone is a successor to that legacy, I'm not diagnosing Biden with anything, but in terms of his cognitive state, Biden is the closest one to Reagan so far in terms of his declining capacity. I mean, that's just true based on who the recent president is. So right. I don't know why you'd want to claim that legacy of being Reagan's successor, but hey.
Well, they love him though. The Republicans love the dirty wars. They love all those things. Some Democrats probably like them too. But also, it's funny when you said he developed Alzheimer's. It made it sound like he created it in a lab or something.
Well, who knows?
He got it, but
maybe
who does
maybe
know, right?
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible, right? With the Gipper.
Yeah. I mean, some people have all kinds of theories about what the government did. I'm certainly not pushing that theory, but
right. Right. I mean, Al Gore invented the internet. Ronald Reagan invented the Alzheimer's. Why not?
Many people within the pro-life movement feel DeSantis' 6-week abortion ban was too harsh. Well, DeSantis responded to Trump earlier this week.
Also, he should call it the anti-abortion movement because pro-lifers want to call it pro-lifers. And if you're Catholic, I'll give you that. Sure. If you're evangelical and you're for the death penalty, no, sorry. I call myself pro-choice, not pro-abortion, right? I understand that I don't expect him to call the pro-choice move. This is actually, we should look. I don't think he says pro-choice. Pro-abortion isn't good either, but anti-abortion seems fair. Seems fairer than, I guess, pro-abortion, pro-reproductive rights. I don't know. I'm trying to be fair and balanced about it, but I just don't think you can hand it to them with pro-life.
As a Florida resident, you know, he didn't give an answer about would you have signed the heartbeat bill that Florida did. They had all the exceptions that people talk about. The legislature put it in. I signed the bill. I was proud to do it. He won't answer whether he would sign it or not.
I like the way he sounds annoyed by the exceptions. Like, it had all the exceptions that people wanted in, you know, rape and incest, fine. You think that people shouldn't be forced to carry to term their rape fetus, fine. I did it.
His tone reminds you of Kamala in a certain ways. They both sound perpetually annoyed and whiny, you know.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the like spoken word poetry delivery that she sometimes has when she's talking about like the future is not the past in which we live, which is the present. I mean, she didn't say that, but she says stuff like that. Yeah, she sounds stoned sometimes, and he doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's so nasal.
Very, very nasal.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, I can't hate on someone who's nasal.
Yeah, I can't either. We can't. Yeah, that would be nasal hypocrisy.
Exactly. All right. Let's go. Okay, so you know, Ukraine's back in the news. It got kind of pushed to the side in all these cable shows recently, but there is still that war going on. The U.S. is still fueling it with billions of dollars in weapons. And remember how we were told, all right, we're not going to give Ukraine tanks, but then we did. And then they were like, all right, but we're not going to give Ukraine F-16s. Well, guess what? We just crossed that line too. So the U.S. just approved F-16s for Ukraine. And here is Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, being interviewed about this by Jake Tapper of CNN.
Talk about some of the accomplishments there in Japan. President Biden told the G7 leaders that the United States is going to support this joint effort to train Ukrainian pilots to fly F-16 fighter jets. As you know, just a few months ago, the president said there was no basis militarily for giving Ukraine jets and that Ukraine didn't need them at all. What changed, and would these jets not have been more effective if Ukraine had been trained and had them in time for the upcoming counteroffensive?
First of all, nothing changed. The U.S. has just continually lied and said we're not going to give this until they do. So Biden was just continuing his policy of basically lying and saying he wasn't going to give weapons that I think they probably knew all along that they would. But again, the strategy is to keep this war going for as long as possible to bleed Russia. And so that's why there's been this drip feed of weapons over time. And then I love how Jake's follow-up is like, it's not like, why aren't you, instead of sending weapons in this like slow roll, why aren't you pushing for diplomacy? Jake's question is, why didn't you do this earlier?
Yeah, exactly.
Why aren't you escalating more?
Too little, too late, buddy.
It's the only way you can be adversarial on corporate news is if you're, you know, haranguing officials for not being hawkish enough. That's pretty much the only way you can ask a tough question on this issue of the Ukraine proxy war.
And who can forget that amazing press conference where you had just like a chorus of people in the audience asking for the no-fly zone?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Jake, when President Biden answered that question, he was talking about the preparations that the United States and our allies were making with Ukraine for the counteroffensive. And the critical systems for the counteroffensive are not planes. They're tanks and artillery systems and HIMARS and huge amounts of ammunition. And the United States has mobilized an exceptional effort to deliver on time and in full everything Ukraine needs to launch this counteroffensive. Now that we've done that, we can look forward to the long-term capacity of Ukraine to be able to defend itself and deter Russian aggression. Fourth-generation fighter aircraft, Western fighter aircraft, F-16s are relevant to that fight. That's why the president told his G7 colleagues this weekend that he will, in fact, support the training of Ukrainian pilots. But he is focused on the type of system needed for the phase of the fight that is at hand. And for this counteroffensive, he has delivered at speed and at scale what the Ukrainians need.
What he means by that is this isn't just about Ukraine's short-term needs, because again, the U.S. current strategy has just been to give Ukraine enough weapons to keep the war going and keep the war inside of Ukraine, because the U.S. doesn't want to get directly involved. They just want to sacrifice Ukrainian lives to bleed Russia, right?
Right.
That's the strategy. So when he talks about Ukraine's long-term needs, he means that there's a long-term plan to have perpetual conflict between Ukraine and Russia, so that even once a ceasefire is reached in this current phase of the conflict, if we send Ukraine F-16s, this will help them out in the foreseen and hoped for longer-term war that will happen a few years down the line.
Right.
So
The endless proxy war.
Endless proxy war. Yeah.
Right.
That's the recipe here. Yeah.
By the way, Jake Sullivan is so boring and so corpse-like. I had to watch all the clips of him several times because I would doze off. Like my eyes would glaze over and I could not focus on what the hell he was saying.
He's much more exciting in private. He's the one of my favorite lines in U.S. government history ever. He's the one who wrote to Hillary Clinton back in 2012, Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Right? Imagine if he said stuff like that publicly.
Right.
Hey, everyone, we're on the side of Al-Qaeda. You know,
right.
in his like little schoolboy outfit. Like he'd be really entertaining, but in public, he's very dry.
He does look like he does look like a student at an all-boys New York City prep school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All
By the way,
boys,
sorry, what'd you say?
All boys, proxy war prep school.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he specializes in.
Yeah. Proxy war prep. Have you heard of that school, proxy war prep?
Mm-hmm.
Someone put in, do you remember the T.I. Pain song, Whatever You Like? And I can't find the comment now, but they said that's what our song, like our refrain for Zelensky is.
T.I. You mean T-Pain or T.I.?
Sorry, T-Pain. I think I just which one sang that? Whose songs? Good question. Although I think I just created a great duo.
I mean, you merged T.I. and T-Pain. That's I like it. I like it.
They should do that. They should go on tour. Yeah. And thank you, Wadesworth, so much for your super chat. Your very generous super chat. All right.
Back to Jake.
President Biden going to allow European countries to give their F-16s to Ukraine, and will they? These jets arrive in Ukraine before the end of 2023.
I'm not going to put a timetable on it. What the president has said is that he'll sit with his European allies.
Kenny, what do you think of Jake's tie?
Which Jake? Because I was going to say this is Jake on Jake.
There's two
Jakes. This is Jake on Jake violence. Yeah.
I'd watch that show, by the way, the two Jakes.
Yeah, me too.
Wow.
Starring T.I. Pain.
No, I meant Jake Tapper's tie with the yellow and the little polka dots.
Yeah. I mean, is his jacket navy? Because what he should do is wear a bright blue jacket, and you got the Ukrainian flag right there.
There we go.
Yeah. I kind of like it. What do you think? Flashy, a little too flashy.
I mean, I don't like ties to begin with, so I'm biased.
Oh, right.
But it's like I don't. It's like it really stands out. But I have to kind of respect it because at least it's not drab like Jake Sullivan.
Right. Little, Tapper, Jake 1 is more exciting than Jake 2. Yeah,
absolutely, it's true.
Yeah.
In all ways.
In all ways, I know.
Which is hard to say. If you're more exciting than
Jake Tapper.
Yeah.
If you're more exciting than Jake.
If Jake Tapper is more exciting,
is the more exciting one. Yeah, right.
It's impressive.
Yeah, I know. He looks like so dynamic. Yeah. Looks like a bowl of fun. Yeah.
Those two Jakes, what a pair.
And with the Ukrainians to work out who, when, and how many jets get transferred, and we're in the process of doing that right now.
Okay, all right, great. So, great news, everybody. More weapons for Ukraine, F-16s, which previously was said to be never going to happen. Right. What's next? What's next in this fun game of, which weapon system will Ukraine get next? Is it going to be, I don't know, ATACMS or maybe nukes? Maybe bring some nukes
maybe
back?
Nukes, why not? Yeah. Why not an A-bomb? They went from Never Gonna Get It by En Vogue, little deep cut, to Whatever You Like.
To Whatever You Like.
Yeah.
Or also, what's that song? Remember, no. There's no limits. So no limits.
I don't know that.
It's same era. Anyway, the point is,
cool. Yeah.
Whatever you like, no limits. Ukraine, it's all yours as long as you keep this proxy war going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and then they also feature, you could say, a little bit of with the Nord Stream pipeline, that of course is It Wasn't Me by Shaggy. So we got the whole soundtrack. Yeah, we got the whole playlist for you for this war. Yeah.
All right. Let's go to more Jake
Another
Sullivan.
Jake on Jake? Yeah. More Jake on Jake, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
More Jake on Jake.
Of course. So what would be the objection?
Crimea is Ukraine. I mean, that's a very...
Okay, yeah. So here, Jake Tapper is asking Jake Sullivan about Crimea. Will Ukraine be able to bomb Crimea? And let's hear Jake's answer.
Of course. So what would be the objection?
Crimea is Ukraine. I mean, that's a very straightforward thing.
Well, yeah, you answered it directly. I mean, Russia doesn't think so, obviously. But do you think that Ukraine should have weapons that can reach Russian targets in Crimea?
Yes, we have not placed limitations on Ukraine being able to strike on its territory within its internationally recognized borders. What we have
See, no limits. There's no limits.
Said is that we will not enable Ukraine with U.S. systems, Western systems, to attack Russia, and we believe Crimea is Ukraine.
Okay.
So that's Jake saying that Ukraine can go ahead and bomb Crimea. Crimea, again, is this peninsula that was long a part of Russia and the Soviet Union, and then in the 1950s it was transferred to Ukraine because by Khrushchev, who was sort of, I think, feeling sentimental and nostalgic and kind of in a drunken stupor. Anyway, 2014, after the coup, Russia takes it back because Russia's afraid that Crimea, host to its most important naval base, is going to fall into NATO hands.
Right.
And all of Russia, including Putin's opposition, supported that move. And Russia said, we're never going to give back Crimea. And here Jake is saying that we encourage Ukraine to attack Crimea. And I mean, what can you say? He's just like encouraging escalation after escalation. And when he says that we put limits on Ukraine to not attack inside Russia, well, we know, I mean, Ukraine has attacked inside Russia. They hit an air base last year. They're alleged to have carried out this drone strike on the Kremlin. And we know from the Washington Post recently, citing the Pentagon leaks, that Zelensky wanted to bomb inside of Russia, but finally was convinced not to. So, yeah, it's just they're playing with fire.
You know what else this reminds me of song-wise is that song from the 90s, More and More. Remember, more and more and more. I don't know where we're going to. More and more and more. There's so much we don't want to do because we lie, we cheat, and we run from each other and every heart affair. Yes, we lie, we cheat, and we hurt till somebody's in despair.
Well, there's no despair here from CNN or Jake Sullivan, even though we're constantly threatening a worse disaster by doing all this. But let's keep going with Jake Sullivan and Jake Tapper, the two Jakes.
Yeah, the two Jakes.
Aid to Ukraine a minute ago. There was this very bizarre admission from the Pentagon this week of an accounting error that suggested that the U.S. has at least $3 billion that it didn't know it had that it can use for Ukraine aid. That's a hell of an accounting error, and it provides a lot of fodder to critics of U.S. aid to Ukraine and critics who say there's not enough oversight going on. Are you concerned about this accounting error?
Well, one thing I just want to make clear, that is not money that went out the door and disappeared. That is not a waste of that $3 billion. It is simply a tally of how much military equipment we have given them. And the way that the Pentagon was counting it was, what's the replacement cost for the equipment we provide, rather than just the actual cost of that equipment. Once you make that adjustment, it turns out we have an additional $3 billion that we can spend to provide even more weapons to Ukraine. And at the end of the day, not one penny of U.S. dollars will have gone missing or have been misallocated. It will all be provided in the form of equipment to Ukraine on the battlefield. But of course,
you hear that? Not one penny
will have been.
Yeah, of U.S. Aid will have been misallocated. I don't know. That's not what Seymour Hersh reported recently when he wrote that Zelensky's been warned by the U.S. that, they know how much money is being taken off the top. And actually, there are some people inside Ukraine who are unhappy that they're not getting their cut. And that's what William Burns, the director of the CIA, warned Zelensky about recently. And Cy Hersh gave a figure of a lot of money every single year. I think it was something like $400 million or something being stolen from U.S. energy aid or something like that. Anyway, the point is the idea that no U.S. weaponry aid is being misallocated in Ukraine, one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Right. I don't know. And then you at that time, and we covered this. Remember when CBS, like 60 Minutes, had that report where they said that like 30% of U.S. weaponry is not reaching the front lines, and it's being, and then of course CBS had to like edit that out because the Pentagon and Ukraine got mad at them. So that would beg to differ.
Yeah. Also, it's just good to know that back in the fall, the Defense Department failed its 5th audit.
Of course.
And they were unable to account for more than half of its assets. But you know what they framed it as, Aaron? They said it wasn't failure. You know what it is?
What was it?
A teachable moment.
There we go. Good for them for learning.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
From our Pentagon is just growth. Learn from your mistakes.
Right, we want growth. Yeah. In all senses of the word. Yeah.
And if you fail 5 audits, it's a teachable moment and you move on and you keep getting
move on.
Hundreds of billions of dollars in taxpayer money. Why not?
You learn on the job.
Yeah.
You learn as you go. Yeah. Also, guys, I don't want to interrupt this amazing stream, but you got to hit the likes. We're not even at half. And that is just, you are not a useful idiot. You are not a patriot if you don't hit the like. I mean, where else do you find this analysis? Where else do you find people who watch Jake on Jake, hot Jake on Jake action? Where are we at with the like?
698. 0739. That was a quick jump.
Let's get to 800, and we're being generous here. We should be above 1,000. Jesus Christ! It's not like we don't do this every week, people. Some people like being chastised. It's a fine line, because I know some people like when I chastise them, so I can get a lot of people that way. But then other people, I think, don't like it. So it's a fine line.
Also, more Jake on Jake content can be bought with likes. There is more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you want more Jake on Jake. Where are we at? Okay. You're welcome, guys, because really I should be making you go to 1,000.
Well, as a special treat for passing 800 likes, we're going to give you more Jake on Jake. Here we go.
Correction coming from the Pentagon. The U.S. is walking back claims that a drone strike in Syria earlier this month killed a senior leader of the terrorist group Al-Qaeda. The family of the man killed told CNN he was just a 56-year-old shepherd with 10 kids, 0 connections to terrorism. Is that right, that the strike did not kill the senior Al-Qaeda leader? It killed a civilian. And if it is true that it was a civilian killed, is anyone going to be held accountable?
Well, in fact, Jake, it was President Biden who stood up with Secretary Austin guidelines for this administration to ensure that there would be accountability and oversight of any potential civilian casualties from counterterrorism strikes. In this particular instance, the Pentagon is conducting a full and thorough investigation. They will report the results of that investigation to the president, and we will proceed from there. So far, we do not have evidence to validate the claims being made in Syria, but I am going to withhold any judgment on what exactly happened here until the Pentagon's investigation is complete.
I love how, wait, hold on. Let me just play again. Look at how the guy is like, has no life in him. He's all death. He's just a corpse. When he's mentioning the potential killing of a civilian, look at his face. There's no empathy, no response.
Anyone going to be held accountable?
Well, in fact,
he couldn't care less.
Yeah. He's the national security advisor. You think he doesn't know already exactly
Right.
who this man was who was killed?
Right.
This, father of 10. And what's, this is a classic case of the Pentagon says something. We killed the senior Al-Qaeda leader in Syria. The media just uncritically parrots it. And then afterwards, the truth happens to come out and they have to walk everything back. And then Jake has to pretend as if we're going to seek accountability. And we've already supported accountability efforts. But look, there's a, really stark case. And people the U.S. commits atrocities so easily and the media doesn't care that it just gets swept under the rug. But the New York Times revealed that the U.S. in a drone strike killed dozens of civilians in Syria. This came out in like November of 2021, I think. And dozens of civilians in Syria. The U.S. watched it all on camera because they had their own drones flying overhead of their other drones. There were whistleblowers who called it, who complained. There was, there was so much evidence. And then the Pentagon announced a review. And of course, like, what came of it? Was anybody punished? Was there any kind of public hearing on this? No, everyone just is supposed to forget about it. And this is another case here where this father of 10 on his own farm was killed by a U.S. drone. And Jake's pretending as if there will be accountability. But, one of the reasons why I doubted the story from the start, on top of the fact you always have to be skeptical of U.S. government claims like this, is that in Syria, as Jake Sullivan wrote in 2012, Al-Qaeda is on our side. That has been official U.S. policy. U.S. supported an insurgency that was dominated by Al-Qaeda. And now an Al-Qaeda offshoot called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, it's just Al-Qaeda with a new name, they control the province of Idlib. And the U.S. totally allows them to operate there freely. In fact, the U.S. helped Al-Qaeda capture Idlib to begin with. The U.S. was instrumental to providing intelligence and support that helped Al-Qaeda and its allies take over Idlib. So the idea that they're now going after Al-Qaeda leaders, to me, doesn't even make sense. So I'm not surprised that this person actually wasn't in Al-Qaeda because, as Jake Sullivan said, Al-Qaeda is on our side.
Right. Also, either way, this is a bad thing because either they killed an innocent person or they don't have the intelligence to know what the hell they're doing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
By the way, I know we don't like to respond to the comments, but I got to say, someone in the comments said, by the way, likes are like tips. They're not an obligation. You must be the worst customer. I pity the servers and waiters who deliver your food. Stop being cheap and stop being a little B word, because that's just little B behavior. Do you say that to your servers? By the way, this tip is optional. It's not an obligation. Jesus. You just made the case for why you should like. All right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, a big thing happened this week where this report got released from John Durham, a special prosecutor who was looking into the origins of the whole Trump-Russia investigation. For people who don't remember that was this thing that consumed the country for years and years and years, where Trump's opponents accused him of being a Russian asset. And the FBI took that at face value and investigated this and kept the investigation going and suggested that there was something to it when all along they knew that this was a complete scam backed by the Clinton campaign. So John Durham, with a special prosecutor, put out a report confirming what we already knew, that this was a scam. This was done to basically, for many reasons that we don't need to go into, but this was a scam and a very consequential one. And this report came out from John Durham saying the FBI basically had nothing to go on, kept this investigation going, and was even warned early on that the Clinton campaign was trying to frame Trump as a Russian asset, but ignored all that. Anyway, this report comes out. You'd think a media that parroted all this, that bought into Russiagate, kept it going, would maybe want to pay some attention to this report that shows everything they told us was a lie. But all the Sunday cable news shows pretty much ignored this report, except for Fox News, which unfortunately is the only place that covered this. And of course, they have a partisan interest here because they back Republicans and Trump. Sure. But still, it doesn't negate the fact that this is an important story. So anyway, here is Devin Nunes, and he's a former member of Congress who investigated Russiagate when he was on the House Intelligence Committee. And he was accurate. He's been vindicated by everything that's come out. But back when he was doing it, he was widely attacked by CNN, MSNBC, and Democrats. And here he is now talking about what the Durham report revealed, speaking to Maria Bartiromo of Fox News.
This was a stunt by the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. It failed miserably because Donald Trump won overwhelmingly.
Right.
Then what happened? Obama was directly involved because he's the one that went back right after the election in 2016. He got all the intelligence agencies involved, and they leaked out to the fake news media that, oh, the Russians must have done something and they were trying to help Trump. Obama did that, but Obama knew. We now know from Durham, Obama knew and his team knew in August of 2016 that this was a dirty trick by the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Unbelievable.
So
yeah.
I think the question is, where do we go from here? That's the real question.
Yeah.
Right?
Where do we go?
One thing we at least have is our voice, and that's what we can do to spread that word. But I think the Congress is going to have to dive deep into this.
Yes, for sure. All right.
I like the way the Academy awards him.
Yeah, I know.
They start playing
Fox News is really unique in that they play music to like usher people out, which is it's kind of condescending to the guest, but it's also it adds some drama to what they're saying.
It make a lot of pathos. It looks like you're watching like an infomercial. Yeah.
But look, what he's saying is true. In actually late July 2016, Obama was told personally by John Brennan, his CIA director, that they had intelligence that the Clinton campaign was plotting to frame Trump. So everyone knew this, but they let this investigation not only begin into Trump being a potential Russian asset, but they let it grow ultimately into what it became, which is the Mueller investigation, and just kept it going for years and years and years. So, there's been no grappling with this revelation whatsoever. Everyone who bought into Russiagate just kind of ignored it and tried to move on and said that Durham came up empty. Anyway, it's a pretty big story, and it's too bad that it's only Fox News covering it. But that's what it is. So let's go.
And then also people say, "Oh, this is a right-wing talking point because look, it's only on Fox News."
Absolutely,
which is so frustrating. But also, just one thing is that if Obama legitimately, sincerely believed that Trump was a Russian agent, that means he was complicit. He would have been complicit in handing the government over to Russia.
He did. It's true. Let's investigate Obama.
Seriously.
Maybe he's in on it. Yeah.
One more comment. Sorry, one more comment I have to respond to. I'm sorry. And I won't respond to any more comments. Another LB, little B in the chat said, gaslighting your audience is a great way to grow a following. What gaslighting am I engaging in? Stop being an LB. That's major LB behavior. And you're overusing, like so many people, the word gaslighting. If you feel gaslit by us asking for a like, you need to work on that issue. But luckily, because I'm generous, I didn't block you from the chat.
That's very nice of you.
I
feel gaslit by the person who accused us of gaslighting.
Exactly. That's gaslighting. LBG, little b gaslighting.
That's a particular grade of gas right there. That little b gas.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's have more on this. And again, it's unfortunate this is only on Fox News and it's only coming from Trump people, but that's just the way it is because our media just is completely ridiculous.
Partisan and irresponsible.
So here is KT McFarland. She's a former Trump official, and she's warning that this is going to keep going, that the CIA is going to intervene in the next election.
Have black and white evidence that the FBI interfered in the 2016 election. And then when they failed to get their candidate elected, Hillary Clinton, then they just set out to destroy the Trump administration. So then go up to 2020. It was the CIA this time that got involved in the 2020 election with those 51 former intel agents who talked about the Hunter Biden laptop as total Russian disinformation. So they've gotten away with it for 2 elections. They're for sure going to get away with it, try to get away with it in 24, right? Because there's no consequence. The difference is in 2024, the evidence is there. We now have the Durham investigation. We have all the congressional investigations. There is now hard evidence that there was election interference by the U.S. intelligence agencies and the Department of Justice. They've got to be terrified.
I got to say, so look, of course, they're only concerned about this because it hit their side. But it is good, I think, that there's at least some attention now on how the CIA interferes in elections. Now, if only they could apply that to how the CIA interferes in other countries too.
Right.
That'd be amazing, because compared to what the CIA does elsewhere, what happened to Trump really actually is
pales in comparison.
Yeah,
right.
But at least they're saying it. It's like it's refreshing to hear it. And I do think that's a positive thing, that there is some scrutiny on it, even though, of course, it's totally for partisan reasons. It's refreshing. It's weird that it's coming from Republicans, but that's the weird time we're in. And this does, though, feed into a culture, and we'll move on to the next clip of Jim Jordan, where basically now everyone is just investigating everybody else. So, Trump, there's all these investigations into him as a Russian asset over January 6th. And meanwhile, now Republicans are responding with investigations into Hunter Biden. And now Jim Jordan, he's teasing a brand new investigation into, once again, Hillary Clinton.
Right.
You want to see another investigation of Hillary and Bill Clinton? Because in the Durham report, John Durham wrote that while they were pursuing Trump, they made no effort to investigate the claim that Hillary Clinton was taking money from foreigners for her Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation.
They not only did investigate her like they did President Trump, they gave her campaign a defensive briefing.
Right.
They should have done the same for President Trump, because they literally had no evidence. So we're going to talk with our lawyers. We're going to talk with Speaker McCarthy on where we proceed from here. In fact, are there people that were highlighted in the Durham investigation, in the Durham report, that we need to talk to on the Judiciary Committee? We're going to give that a good hard look. But nothing is off the table, because it is critical the American people understand how their government, their agencies have been turned on them, the taxpayer, and we get all the facts out there.
Mr. Chairman, could you have...
By the way, I like the way he stands with his hands on his hips when he's talking.
It's very assertive, and it's very confident.
Yeah.
Real quick, do you want to see another
did you want to say something? Sorry.
A good model in posture, really.
Yeah.
Your chest forward. But
he's posturing.
I mean, on the one hand, I think it's good to have leaders investigated and held to account for their actions, especially Hillary Clinton. She's done a lot of shady stuff, and so she deserves scrutiny. That said, though, we're sort of in this weird dynamic where basically both parties just investigate each other, and that's where all the energy goes. So it's like they agree pretty much on this consensus of like corporate rule and serving the military-industrial complex. They agree on that, but yet the main difference comes on things like investigation. So they'll investigate each other, and that's pretty much how the cycle of democracy will go. So it's like cohesion on like serious policies that damage the country and the world, but they will investigate each other in the process. It's a weird dance.
It is a weird dance. It's an investigation à deux. Yeah.
Investigation of Hillary and
so
all right.
Yeah, let's move on. So
this is a great one.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Robert Gates. We love the guy. You love to see him. Robert Gates talking to Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation about China. Let's see what he has to say. And he's, of course, the former defense secretary.
When we spoke, you told me the one glimmer of hope you saw was that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin had united Democrats and Republicans in Washington. There was strong consensus.
Okay, what's interesting about that is that she's saying that Xi and Putin have united Democrats and Republicans, right? But the irony is that Democrats and Republicans, in their Cold War hysteria and through its treatment of Russia, have united Xi and Putin. They've united China and Russia.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. Because the U.S. has been trying to destabilize both and has declared both of them existential enemies. And so China and Russia have naturally found common ground. And
right.
I don't think Russia would have invaded Ukraine if they didn't have China's endorsement, because I don't think that they could have just done it without China's backing. Because if China turned on Russia, then it'd be very difficult for, I think, Russia to weather all that. So yeah, no, that's exactly right. And it's just so funny that this is what Gates sees. Like, he's looking for hope in the world. Like,
yeah,
some people would turn to grassroots movements coming together and fighting for their rights. and fighting for health care and wages. Robert Gates sees hope in Democrats and Republicans coming together to warmonger. That's where he sees hope.
Yeah, Cold War cooperation.
Yeah. So we all look for hope in different places.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's
hear more of this. Yeah.
Do you actually think that's holding?
I do. I think that, in fact, there's kind of a competition on the Hill to see who can be tougher on China. And it makes a more nuanced policy.
And the winner gets what? Nuclear war? Like who wins the who wins the competition? And what do you get when you win? Like you get to oversee nuclear war with China or something, or an invasion of, or like attacking China over Taiwan. What do you get?
Maybe you get a huge panda bear. You know how they give those things out at fairs when you win something, like when you throw, I don't know, whatever little sports game, you get a huge bear to take on. Maybe a Chinese panda,
or a captured weather balloon.
A captured weather balloon, or a captured panda. Actually, that would be the real metaphor. You get a giant panda, but in a cage.
By the administration more difficult.
Okay, wait,
because
hold on. This is great. Watch this. Okay, we got to rewind a little bit.
To see who can be tougher on China, and it makes a more nuanced policy by the administration more difficult, because anything that the administration does to try and put a floor on this relationship gets criticized on the Hill as conceding something.
So is he actually excited about the fact that that a more nuanced position is more difficult? Like he's celebrating a lack of nuance.
He's definitely celebrating. By the way, speaking of words that are overused, nuance, man.
Yes.
If I could block nuance from social media or something, I would, because that also gets overused.
Right.
Way too much.
Like gaslighting.
Yeah. Like whenever whenever I challenge like the dirty war in Syria or the proxy war in Ukraine, I often get accused of lacking nuance.
Right.
And nuance is just a way to basically justify whatever the policy is of the U.S. hegemon, because I'm lacking the nuance to see that it's complicated and there are both sides and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So nuance is definitely overused, but he seems that he doesn't want nuance.
Yeah. He wants, celebrating it.
Yeah. He wants gloves off, just warmongering.
Yeah.
To the Chinese. But I think by and large, there is very broad bipartisan support for what the U.S. is doing for Ukrainians. And I think it's also in terms of China.
Who is it, Jake Tapper or Chuck Todd, who always points out, like, if you want to be popular, or there's one thing that Democrats and Republicans agree on, it's basically warmongering with China. One of them points it out. And it's funny because it's one of those times where they're saying something, but which we would agree with, but they're saying it in a either positive or like neutral way. And we, of course, pointed out as a negative.
Yes. That was the Chuckster. And he's very keen to say that. He
always points that out. Yeah.
And that's why, I mean, we had that, like we covered this a few weeks ago. There was that war game in Congress, like Congress members like getting involved in a war game to simulate a war with China. For some reason, they felt compelled to do that, even though they're not military people. They're just like elected lawmakers. But that was totally bipartisan. Yeah.
That was a fun time.
And the only one there who looked uncomfortable was Ro Khanna. Like there was never,
he did.
He's like sitting there in the circle of lawmakers, and they're all like, getting excited about going to war with China. And there's a picture of him kind of in the background, a little bit sullen. He's like, maybe this isn't such a good idea.
Yeah. All credit. We've credited Ro Khanna for going on to shows where he gets pushback, and we should give him credit for looking uncomfortable with Chinese war games.
Absolutely. Okay. Should we hear more from the sage, Robert Gates?
RG, yeah. Who was too hawkish for Obama, right? He and Hillary saw eye to eye on stuff, but he and Obama, I think, disagreed on a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you make of this feuding that appears to be happening among Russian fighters? You had that video released by Prigozhin, the head of the mercenary group, Wagner Group, really criticizing the defense minister of Russia, saying he's not giving me the ammunition and he's lying about the war. What's happening here?
My view is this is all taking place with Putin's approval.
A theater.
This is Putin dividing and conquering. Putin, given how badly the war has gone, has to worry at some point that his military decides he's a problem. By giving Prigozhin power and strengthening Prigozhin and letting him criticize the Ministry of Defense, Putin keeps them divided. If the two came together and decided Putin was a problem, then Putin would have a really big problem. So my view is that Putin is sort of orchestrating this to a degree in the sense, or at least letting it go forward because it serves his interest in keeping these two powerful forces at each other's throats rather than potentially beginning to collude against him.
Because it's about his survival.
It's all about his survival.
Putin is the mastermind of everything. We already know this. He was the mastermind of the 2016 election. He was the mastermind of Black Lives Matter. He was the mastermind of Havana Syndrome, of Russian
Jill
bounties.
Stein.
Jill Stein, Bernie Sanders, everything.
Right.
Putin is a mastermind. But yet he's not winning either. Who knows actually in this case? So what he's talking about is this feud between Prigozhin, the head of Wagner Group, this Russian mercenary force, and the Russian military leadership. And Gates is saying that Putin is either behind this or he's tolerating it. I don't know. I don't know the truth. What I do know is that Putin is constantly being accused of being a mastermind, and I don't know. Maybe he's not behind every single possible thing.
I mean, it all goes back to the RPB, the Russian playbook.
The Russian playbook.
All right.
Okay. Well, another thing in the Russian playbook, Katie, this must be also the Russians' fault, which is this debt limit crisis,
right?
Where Republicans are dragging their feet. They're insisting on holding the debt ceiling hostage, and of course, they don't want to entertain any cuts to the military budget, nor do they want to roll back Trump's tax cuts, which favored the wealthy. In fact, they want to make those tax cuts permanent.
Exactly.
So we have a problem here, and Republicans are basically demanding that social spending gets the axe. And so we have this standoff going on. And so here is the always exciting Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen.
Try not to get too excited or aroused by the charisma that you're about to see. Yeah.
You just going to sit there and pick and choose? Or why not go and pay? And then, it's one of those, are you going to pay all of our debts and essentially let the courts tell us you shouldn't have? I mean, if we breach this debt ceiling, I understand not wanting to use it now, but are we really going to sit there and just let some bills go unpaid, not even trying this?
Well, we take the debt ceiling seriously as a constraint on our ability to pay bills that are coming due. And my assumption is that if the debt ceiling isn't raised, there will be hard choices to make about what bills go unpaid. And
so there will be bills on what you're saying is
what
you're saying is if the debt ceiling is not raised, that there's going to be a default on President Biden's watch, even though he doesn't want it, that you're not going to try any other measures. You'll allow a default on some debt if Congress doesn't raise this debt ceiling.
Well, there will be some bill. We have to pay interest and principal on outstanding debt. Mm-hmm. We also have obligations to seniors who count on Social Security, our military that expects pay, contractors who have provided services to the federal government, and some bills have to go unpaid.
So there will be some bills unpaid if the debt ceiling is not raised.
Yes, and many people,
have you decided which bills?
Rating agencies.
Have you decided which bills those are going to be yet?
I would say we're focused on raising the debt ceiling, and there will.
Chuck, I'd refer you to the song "Bills, Bills, Bills" for more answers. That will answer your question.
Right.
Until then, I have nothing more to say. But what is clear is, look, like the Republican position is, to me, it's so reckless, and it's such an attack on working people. They do want to cut social spending. They want to cut food stamps. They want to impose so-called right to work like right to work requirements, or basically to get government assistance, you have to work or prove that you've tried to find work. When so many people who rely on government assistance aren't in a position to do that, and they're taking military cuts and tax cuts. They're taking like military cuts and tax cuts off the table. So they want to keep the Trump tax cuts and expand them, and keep funding the military industrial complex. So,
right. And also, I had Richard Wolff on. I'm releasing it this week. I'm playing some of it, if I can, a little plug on my tomorrow night Katie Halper show, youtube.com/Katie Halper show. And he says that he went to school with Janet Yellen, and she knows better. And she knows that the answer to this is taxing the rich. And she's pretending like that's not the answer. So, yeah. But we got more. Speaking of the debt ceiling, let's hear from some Republicans. From a Republican on the debt ceiling. This is a very interesting exchange from Byron Donalds, the Republican representative from Florida.
To respond to something former President Trump said about the debt ceiling in 2019. Take a listen.
I can't imagine anybody ever even thinking of using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge.
Why don't you agree with him on this?
Well, first of all, he also said the other day on a rival network that he said that when he was president, and when asked why he wasn't saying it now, he said because he's not president. Listen, Donald Trump is always negotiating.
Do you realize how absurd that sounds?
That is not absurd.
How
He's
is that not
always
absurd?
negotiating, Chuck. Chuck, he's always negotiating. That's what he does.
Yeah?
That's actually one of the reasons why so many deals for our country worked out to our benefit as compared to his predecessors, both Republican and Democrat, because he's always negotiating.
Do you realize how partisan?
So many deals. Oh, all those deals.
So many deals. All those deals. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The art of the deal. Yeah.
The art of the deal. He got us so many deals. Why can't Chuck say what deals were those? Does he? I mean, come on. Like, this is a good way to nail Trump too. Like, what deals? Like, what's he talking about? Like, Trump's only accomplishment, really, like he had a few. Accomplishment, quote unquote. He cut taxes for the ultra wealthy, right? And that was a deal he made with his Republican. Allies. He made a deal with Sheldon Adelson to move the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and he got $20 million or something for his campaign for that. How did the country benefit from that? And he did the Abraham Accords in the Middle East, which basically were done to normalize relations with Israel, between Israel and Arab states, and further displace Palestinians, further take Palestinian rights off of the table. So those are Trump's major accomplishments, quote unquote. And I can't think of anything else he did that could be like any other deals he made. He tore up
killing Soleimani.
Soleimani, well, that was a deal. He tore up the Iran nuclear deal. That worked out.
That was right. That was an anti-deal.
He tore up vital arms treaties with Russia, which helped bring us to the war we're in today. So anyway, but Chuck can't talk about that stuff because that's where Democrats are actually pretty much in agreement with him at this point.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It is funny though, watching Trump say that he can't imagine using the debt ceiling as a bargaining chip or as a wedge. But now he's saying they should do that. Mm-hmm. And the difference is he was president when he said that, and now he isn't. But it's also funny that he can't imagine doing that. It happened in 2011 when they shut everything down. But he did just wake up in 2014 to start doing politics or whatever, but still. All right, should we finish this clip?
Yeah.
And that sounds
what
is good for me is not for thee. Listen, he's basically saying when I'm president, there's no negotiating on this. But hey, when somebody else is president, screw them.
Well, no, here's the thing. Let's be realistic now. When Donald Trump was negotiating debt ceiling with Nancy Pelosi, mind you, they negotiated that.
No, they didn't. They raised it without any restrictions.
When they were doing that, our economy was thriving. Our debt levels were not where they are right now. Mm-hmm. We were about $24 trillion, not $32 trillion. We weren't having massive deficits the way we are right now. It was a very different environment. Now you have $32 trillion on the credit card, and all House Republicans are saying is, let's go back to pre-pandemic spending. That's common sense stuff.
But they also want to make these tax cuts favoring the wealthy permanent.
Right.
And if you care about the deficit, that certainly doesn't help. It increases it.
Right.
And
Trump raised it. Trump he hasn't mentioned that Trump is responsible for like 40% of the deficit raise or something.
Really? Wow. Well, Man, oh man, what a fun political spectrum we have. And of course,
Seriously.
Democrats, I mean, like not as if they're blameless. I mean,
Oh,
they
of course not, yeah.
also approve record Pentagon budgets just like Trump did. And they got us into a proxy war with Russia, even though Trump played a part in that too. But
right.
That really, happened under their watch. And that has not helped anybody except military contractors. So
right.
Anyway, that's where we're at.
That's where we're at. Well, we don't have time to go through more of the clips. So we're going to have to bring you some of these clips on our Thursday Throwdown, including a Jen Psaki clip, because we love bringing you Psaki bombs.
Oh, yes. We love Psaki bombs. So, and you can get that by signing up at usefulidiots.substack.com or usefulidiots.locals.com and join us now on the app Callin.
Yeah, we'll see you on Callin right now. And the link to that is in the description. Bye, everyone.